Welcome to Star Trek Selections for the original series, Season 3. These are my top 5 episodes of the final season. First, number 5, The Mark of Gideon, written by George F. Slavin and Stanley Adams, and directed by Judd Taylor. The Enterprise heads to the planet Gideon, apparently to discuss diplomatic relations, and they ask for Kirk to beam down alone. He arrives at a completely empty alternate Enterprise. Empty, that is, until he comes across O'Donna, played by the lovely and charming Sharon Acker. She claims to have no memory of how she got there, but remembers that her planet is heavily overcrowded due to a lack of illness and death. Meanwhile, back on the real Enterprise, Spock is trying to figure out what happened to Kirk and is getting stonewalled by the Gideon ruling council, and there's no help coming from the Federation. It turns out the Gideon leader Hoden has kidnapped Kirk, taken his blood, and infected O'Donna, his daughter, with a rare illness which Kirk's blood carries, so as to introduce it to the people of Gideon. Spock arrives in time to retrieve Kirk and send he and O'Donna back to the Enterprise, where Bones cures her. But she still carries the disease in her blood, so she can return to infect her people. I know what you're thinking. Sharon Acker is the reason this is on the list, isn't it? Well, yeah, it's definitely a factor. She is truly gorgeous, and O'Donna is such an endearing character, and Acker plays her with a great deal of warmth and innocence. So yes, Sharon Acker is the main draw for me, but I like quite a bit else about it too. It's actually very amusing watching Spock deal with stubborn bureaucracy, pushing his Vulcan patience to the limit. I feel you, brother. And there are some incredibly impactful moments. It's genuinely unsettling seeing those strange faces peering through the screen. This is not a terribly well-regarded episode, like much of Season 3, but I find it thoroughly enjoyable, and I could look at Sharon Acker all day. At number 4, The Savage Curtain, written by Gene Roddenberry and Arthur Heinemann, and directed by Herschel Doherty. While conducting a geological survey on volcanic planet Excalibur, the Enterprise detects life forms, and then Abraham Lincoln appears on the view screen. Lincoln comes aboard and tells Kirk that he and Spock must beam down. When they arrive, they are joined by the father of Vulcan logic, Surak, and a rock being named Yarnek tells them that he wishes to understand the concepts of good and evil, and he wants to pit Kirk, Spock, Lincoln and Surak, examples of goodness, against a group who represent evil. Genghis Khan, an Earth warlord named Green, an alien named Zora, and the famed Klingon, Kahless the Unforgettable. 24th century Klingons might have something to say about him being touted as out-and-out evil. Kirk and co., being men of peace, naturally do not wish to fight, but when Yarnek puts the Enterprise in danger, most of them feel they have no choice, except for Surak, who believes in peace at any cost. When Surak goes to the bad guys to discuss said peace, he is killed, followed soon after by Lincoln. It is then down to Kirk and Spock to defeat the evildoers and represent goodness to the best of their ability. The Savage Curtain has a bit to say about the nature of good and evil, and while it is not particularly nuanced or in-depth, it ultimately contends that the fundamental difference is that good will fight for a righteous reason, not for personal gain or power. This episode has quite a nice depiction of Lincoln, played by Lee Bergere. He is pretty much how most of us picture him, honest, kind, and dignified. And it is possibly the only appearance of Surak, though his name is mentioned often throughout the history of Star Trek. Also, this is the first appearance of Kahless, who apparently is really good at imitation, imitating Surak and Lincoln. They didn't mention that when they brought him back his clone later on. Overall, it's just a cool episode. Good action, mixed with some interesting ideas. One of the highlights of Season 3 for me. Coming in at number 3 is Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, written by Oliver Crawford from a story by Gene Coon under the pen name Lee Cronin and directed by Judd Taylor. The Enterprise is boarded by an alien named Loki, Lou Antonio, who is black on one side and white on the other. He is being pursued across the galaxy by Beale, played by Frank Gorshin, who is also half black, half white, but reversed. Beale wants Loki dead because he believes Loki and those like him, who are white on the right side, to be inferior. Kirk insists that they be taken to the Federation to mediate the dispute, but Beale is having none of this and takes control of the ship with his mind. To stop him, Kirk uses the infamous self-destruct for the very first time on screen, prompting Beale to release the ship at the last second. However, he later takes control again and disables the self-destruct, and they arrive at Beale and Lokai's home planet, where everyone is now dead, killing each other in their endless race war. This changes nothing. Beale pursues Lokai to the planet, where they will most likely kill each other too. Lou Antonio is very good as Lokai, but Frank Gorshin kind of steals the show as Beale. He's so animated that he makes Shatner look understated. And yes, this episode is an extremely blatant exploration of racism, but just because it's so obvious, it doesn't lessen the impact of the message. That message being, racism is stupid and pointless.
It is obvious to the most simple-minded that Lokai is of an inferior breed.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
Number 2 is The Cloudminders, written by Margaret Arman from a story by David Gerald and Oliver Crawford, and directed by Judd Taylor. The Enterprise is sent to the planet Ardana to pick up some urgently needed Xenite from the planet. Ardana is famed for its floating city Stratos, which is renowned for producing great art. Kirk and Spock arrive on the planet and are attacked by the Troglodytes, who are the working class of Ardana. They are rescued by High Advisor Placis and taken to Stratos, where they meet Placis' daughter, Droxine, a gobsmacking Diana Ewing in that outfit. Kind of like a slutty Elsa from Frozen Halloween costume. Totally down for it. Droxine and Spock seem to have taken a shine to each other, and while they're getting to know each other, Kirk is attacked by Vanna, the leader of the Troglodytes. Vanna is then brutally tortured by Placis, and Kirk and Spock are appalled by the massive class separation on the planet. But the main thing is Kirk needs that Xenite urgently, so he frees Vanna in exchange for it. But she betrays him, and after turning the tables on her, Kirk traps himself and Vanna in the caves and gets Spock to beam down Placis to prove that the gas from the Xenite is making the Troglodytes stupid. Two main reasons why The Cloudminders is a favourite. First, the allegorical story of the class struggle on Ardana, which points a shaming finger at humanity and its wealth disparity problems. And second, you guessed it, Diana Ewing. Say what you want about Season 3 of Star Trek. It may be the weakest season, but it was overflowing with beautiful women to distract from that. And I offer all the praise in the universe to the costume department. Finally, at number 1, it's All Our Yesterdays, written by Jean Lizette Aroest and directed by Marvin Chomsky. In the penultimate episode of the entire series, Kirk, Spock and Bones beam down to the planet Sarpedon just before its sun goes nova. There they find a library run by Mr. Atos. Get it? Librarian? A to Z? Atos? Anyway, the library contains discs of all periods of the planet's history, so the people of the planet could all escape destruction. And while viewing one of these discs, Kirk hears a scream and runs toward it, unknowingly stepping into a different time, similar to the 17th century. Spock and Bones follow, but since Bones was looking at a different disc, they are transported back to the Sarpedon's Ice Age. Back in Kirk's time, he is arrested for witchcraft because he was talking to the others through the portal. Meanwhile, Spock and Bones are taken to a shelter by Zarabeth, beautifully played by Mariette Hartley. She is a political prisoner, and soon she and an odd-behaving Spock develop an attraction to each other. Zarabeth also tells Spock that they will not be able to get back. As to Spock's strange behaviour, apparently since they are thousands of years in the past, he is regressing to an earlier pre-logic Vulcan state. This makes him irrational and aggressive, even going off at Bones for one of his usual insults.
You listen to me, you pointed-eared Vulcan. I don't like that. I don't think I ever did, and now I'm sure.
What's happening to you, Spock?
Nothing that shouldn't have happened long ago.
And eventually almost killing him, after getting it on with Zarabeth. Soon, with the help of a Sarpedonian, whatever, who has fled to that time, Kirk escapes back to the library, and Bones manages to talk Spock down and get him to at least try and get back. Which they of course do, but not before Spock bids a tender and heart-wrenching goodbye to Zarabeth. This is easily my favourite episode of the season, mainly due to the Spock scenes. It's great to see Nimoy play with those repressed Vulcan emotions sometimes. And these scenes are greatly enhanced by Mariette Hartley as Zarabeth, giving my favourite guest performance of the entire series. Plus, she's led yet another of one of those ridiculously stunning one-episode babes which are liberally scattered throughout the series, particularly the third season. However, in Hartley's case, it is her performance that makes the episode rank so highly. How she looks is just a bonus. And let's not forget, this is also a standout episode for Leonard Nimoy. He is the MVP of the entire original series. Seriously, try to imagine the show without him. Thanks for watching Star Trek selections for the original series. In the future, I will return for the Next Generation and beyond, but for now, I will be returning to a century of cinema for a while, next time discussing my favourite films of 1967. Live long and prosper.